Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to start this meeting of the Sumner County Board of Education for November the 27th, 2018. Before we do, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence, and I'm going to follow that by the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. And if you would like to join me, you feel free to do so. Let's do the pledge. Good evening, everyone. Before we get started tonight, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Miss Hayes. She has something she'd like to tell us before we get started.
Early on. Okay. Thank you, Chairman Brewer. I would appreciate the audience's consideration this evening that I'm going to be stepping out at about 6:45, 6:50 this evening. My husband is being sworn in as alderman, so I hope that you would understand that. I appreciate you being here, and I'm going to stay as long as I can to get the comments, and I'll be texting Jeremy, and I may be returning depending upon how long as I'm there for the swearing in and be there to cheer him on. And then I may be heading back. But thank you for the consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. And also, we'd like to let you know that Ms. Bachman will not be with us tonight. She has a respiratory infection, I think, and not doing well, so let's keep her in our thoughts and prayers. Other than that, Mr. Johnson, do you have the roll? All righty. First item on the agenda is adoption of regular agenda. Do I have a motion? Motion approved by Mr. Wise, second by Ms. Brown. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is approval of the regular agenda, or did we just do that? Consent. Yeah, we're on the consent agenda. I paid $700 for these glasses, and I still can't see out of them. Adoption of consent agenda, motion by Mr. Daniels. Any second? Second, Mr. Hawkins, whoever we got there. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consideration of minutes, discussion and interaction regarding the minutes of the October 16th, 2018 regular meeting. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Mr. Gregory. Second by Ms. Andrews. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item is discussion and interaction regarding the minutes of the October 30, 2018 special call meeting. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Mr. Daniels, second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is recognition and hearing of delegations, and we have several tonight. We want to welcome y'all here tonight. Before we get started on that, I want to kind of lay the guidelines out for you, how we do this, and welcome you here as we do that. If you would, when you come to the microphone, when we call your name up, come to the microphone, there's a little silver button on there. Punch that silver button that turns your microphone on, and give us your name and address for the record, and then you'll have 5 minutes to speak on an agenda item. Pretty well know what you think you want to, what I think you want to talk about, and it's on the agenda, so that's fine. It's not a situation where we're going to be asking questions back and forth. We're here to listen to you and gather your information, and then we'll go from there. So we won't be doing questions. We do ask you to direct all your comments to the chair and not to the individual board members, and you will have 5 minutes to come up and say what's on your mind, as long as it's on the agenda item. Did I cover everything?
I think you did.
Okay.
You did a great job.
If you do have questions, just like before, I mean, your board member will be here after the meeting, and we'll be glad to stay around and answer questions for you like that if you'd like. So, that being said, the first person we have is Carrie Stewart, I believe it is. Did I say that right? All right, come on up. Kevin. Okay. There again, glasses.
My name is Kevin Stewart. I live at 330 Blackthorn Lane in Gallatin. Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the board, I'm speaking to you tonight on behalf of myself, my family, and over 600 residents who support my address to you this evening. We are a group of concerned families and citizens affected by the proposed temporary changes to the Sumner County school zones. Our goals provide alternative solutions to the current proposal while remaining empathetic to the needs of the county as a whole. We have two areas of focus. Stop Stage 1. Temporary rezoning has the potential to disrupt the learning environment for all K through 12 students attending both beach and station camp schools. Under the proposed Stage 1 plan, my child will change schools every year over the next 4 years. What we ask of you tonight is to consider the impact the current proposal will have on both school districts. Transitional rezoning will negatively affect every child in both of these schools, regardless if they are the ones being transferred. You will hear from my neighbors many of our concerns, ranging from the psychological impact of multiple transitions, to the strain on academic and athletic departments, to the weakening of our students' potential when competing for scholarships. What we ask of you tonight is to follow your own guidelines, such as Sumner County Schools Board Policy Manual, Section A, Guideline A, which states, the director of schools shall maintain the neighborhood school concept where feasible, keeping neighborhoods and communities of neighborhoods together whenever possible. To reassign the school attendance areas only when other reasonable and educationally sound choices are not available. The Stage 1 rezoning plan map clearly shows the current station camp zone having been bisected with no eastern or western borders, and the result is a division of the school district where the area north of Cummings Lane is cut off from the remainder of the zone, splitting in half this communities of neighborhood concept. In the spirit of this guideline, we ask why our group has been chosen to move twice rather than to make a change to an area not subject to transfer in Stage 2. We're not asking why us and not them. We understand the need for growth, and we do not wish to impede progress. We simply want to know why we're being asked to move twice. Guideline D states that students should be transported in the most efficient and feasible manner, minimizing travel time and transportation cost. The Carrollton neighborhood is 1.5 miles from Station Camp. Beach is nearly 5. According to Sumner County Schools' own website, approximately 60% of students ride the bus at some time. As that nearly leaves half of all students requiring additional transportation, the Stage 1 zoning proposal has the potential to worsen the already significant traffic safety problem at the intersection of Long Hollow Pike and New Shackle Island Road. Guideline F states, examine and follow natural boundaries, such as railroads, highways, and creeks when drawing school boundaries. As the Carrollton neighborhood, which constitutes the majority of the student population in the Stage 1 proposal, is central to the current Station Camp High School zone, does the board feel this is the most logical and efficient method for transporting our students, despite the existence of these natural boundaries closer to the beach schools? Are guidelines F and H being followed when we want to allow students who have been reassigned to complete the grade span at the school they are currently assigned to? And are we maintaining our commitment to long-range decisions where possible? These past few weeks, I've been privileged to work with my neighbors in debating possible alternatives to Stage 1. And although we are not subject matter experts with regard to education management, we have devised some potential solutions. Some of these include utilizing unused space at Station Camp High School to accommodate AP Honors Middle School students, redrawing the zoning maps to prevent transitional rezoning, portable classrooms, and even asking nearby Welch College to donate or lease classroom space as an expansion to their existing relationship with Station Camp High School. Our second goal is to support Stage 2 in the new school cluster. Again, we do not wish to impede growth. We understand this is a necessity. We recognize the difficulty in the decision you must face. However, we also acknowledge that as elected officials, you requested this responsibility. We find it disturbing that the burden of poor long-term decision-making has fallen upon the shoulders of our children. And now is the time for you to uphold your obligations to your offices and represent your constituents. We, the people of this community, find the current proposal of transitional rezoning unacceptable.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Next one is Sarah Veal.
Hi, my name is Sarah Veal. My address is 177 Ferdinand Drive in Gallatin. My daughter is a kindergarten student at Station Cap Elementary. I am also a licensed professional counselor with 18 years of experience working with children, adolescents, and families. It is well known that structure and consistency are developmentally essential for children. They do best with the familiar. Ultimately, we are all here because we want what is best for our children and for them to be as successful as possible academically and emotionally. Forcing them to move schools twice is most definitely not in their best interests. We researched academic journals regarding school mobility, which focused on students moving schools, not physically moving from one home to another. It should be noted that the data is limited, perhaps because most people know moving children more than necessary is detrimental on many levels, academically, socially, and emotionally. Furthermore, this is unprecedented in our community and uncommon in our nation as a whole due to the instability it causes for all involved. I do have some handouts here with our quotations and references to our resources, if you guys would like that, please. Thank you. The research does support our concerns that multiple moves are detrimental to our children. Here's a quote from one of the studies. Changing schools may be psychologically disruptive, serving as a source of turbulence in children's lives. For example, when children change schools, they are faced with new teachers, peers, rules, routines, school cultures, and curricula. Children who switch schools experience substantially higher levels of psychological stress, including feelings of greater disorientation, lower sense of belonging, less close relationships with teachers and peers, and greater risk of being bullied. In turn, they have higher risk of mental health difficulty even after controlling for exposure to other types of adversity. Changing schools multiple times could be traumatic for our children. While most think of trauma as related to war, violence, or abuse, it is so much more than that and is very personal and unique to each individual. Trauma is defined as emotional distress related to a stressful event, an emotional upset, an upheaval. The two-stage rezoning plan on the table is most definitely an unfair upheaval of our children, which is already causing many of them distress. This distress is affecting whole families. Research out of Notre Dame not only supports our concerns about moving children multiple times, but also found that those left behind may also be negatively impacted. Another quote, while students who change schools, especially frequent movers, can suffer psychologically, socially, and academically, another important finding is that academic achievement of the stable core, the 30% of students who stay in one school, are also negatively affected by the school's mobility rate. Dr. Jennifer Warlick, a professor at Notre Dame, had studied the impact of student mobility on children. And she stated, we need to tell people how detrimental it is to switch schools. We want to let people know how much they are hurting their children. It puts kids behind and they may never catch up. Last but certainly not least, we are concerned about the academic impact multiple moves will have on our children. Please consider this quote. The general conclusion of research on school mobility and achievement is that the two are negatively associated. A report by the National Research Council and Institute of Medicine and a meta-analysis by Mahana and Reynolds both concluded that in the elementary grades, changing schools has a negative effect on math and reading achievement, equivalent to a 3 to 4 month disadvantage in learning. We understand that the current plan is based on numbers and physical safety, but there is more than one kind of safety. We're imploring you all to consider more than just numbers, to consider the unknown impact multiple moves will have on our children's emotional and mental well-being, as these moves impact their self-esteem and overall academic and developmental successes. The bottom line is this: if there is a viable alternative to moving our children more than once, it needs to be explored. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. Next one is David Matsumoto. She left it on, so if you would go ahead and push it again.
Good evening. Despite the cold,
If
my
you
name
would
is
give her
David.
your name and address for the
Yeah,
record, please.
my name is David Matsumoto. My address is 229 Blackthorn Lane in Gallatin. My wife and I, we have 5 children at station camp. For work, I'm a CPA and a forensic accountant, so it's part of my job to look at numbers within the contexts of laws and regulations. Thus, among the Stop Stage 1 parents here, I've volunteered to collect and analyze the nuts and bolts data, such as enrollment, costs, and other objective information to validate the realistic nature of our various ideas. I submitted our first records request on November 13th, and I appreciate Mr. Jeremy Johnson's responsiveness. I also want to thank him and Dr. Phillips for meeting me yesterday to clarify certain items and for candidly providing additional information and insight. At the board's regular meeting this January, you can expect us parents to provide a formal report for your consideration. The report will propose alternative solutions for the county's transition to the new campus, and these alternatives will be supported by the nuts and bolts data that I'm collecting. However, I do foresee one possible slowdown now in preparing this report. In my records request, I asked for information such as growth projections broken down by neighborhood. In the official response for these particular items, my request was, quote, denied because responsive records do not exist, end quote. In my discussion yesterday, Mr. Johnson clarified that such information is only in Dr. Phillips' head. While this definitely attests to Dr. Phillips' competence and attentiveness, my past experience as an auditor ultimately flags this as a concern. I know that zoning is an inexact science, but I worry that proposals with huge ramifications have large components which are based on information that's either undocumented or unorganized. We need to remember to fall back on the example of our math teachers. Please ensure that we've shown our work in arriving at the solution. Since we have not done so in this case, you, the board, and we, the community, are limited in our ability to efficiently review the reasoning behind the rezoning proposal announced on October 23rd. Because of this unexpected limitation, not in spite of it, I'm even more optimistic that an alternative to Stage 1 exists. I'm very open and would look forward to an ongoing collaboration with Dr. Phillips to periodically meet with him as I did yesterday and collect information from his head, which is missing as a written record. He, Mr. Johnson, and I had a great conversation yesterday. I ask that you, the board, support these types of meetings which go above and beyond the legal minimum for records requests. As our county transitions to include a new campus in 2021, Stage 1 seems to be a simple plan for the grown-ups until then. However, any transitional plan should be as simple as possible for our students, even if it requires extra creativity and complexity for us grown-ups. I would rather spend many late nights working through complications than have my kids rezoned twice in 2 years. Thank you for your time. Please let me know if you have any questions or if you wish to hold a discussion with me and the rest of our Stop Stage 1 parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matsumoto. Next one's Michelle Harding. Push the silver button down on the bottom. The little red light will come on.
Oh, that one. Okay, sorry. My name is Michelle Harding. I live at 208 Buckley Point in Gallatin. My family and I have been residents of Sumner County since June of 2017 when my husband Matthew was assigned to the Naval ROTC unit at Vanderbilt University. Of all the places in Middle Tennessee that we have looked at, we chose Sumner County because it felt like a great place to establish roots. This was our last move with Matt retiring soon, and it felt like home. Matt and I have 3 children. Aiden is a senior at Station Camp High School. Brendan's in 8th grade at Station Camp Middle, and Olivia is in 5th grade at Station Camp Elementary. My children are no strangers to being the new kids. Being military dependents, they're always the new kid. We would send them off on their first day at a new school with prayers and hopes that they adapt easily, they get on with their peers, and they find a way to feel at home. Some transitions have been easy and some have not. Take our move here. Our son in middle school did not have the best start. His first year at Station Camp Middle was rough. He is very shy and reserved, and having to handle all the other things, just being 13 years old, it was a difficult year for him. He is now in 8th grade. He has found his niche in marching band, as he was able to pre-march with the high school students at the beginning of this year. He has established many valuable friendships with other students and teachers. He is finally settled, and now with this proposal, it is a huge possibility that that's going to be taken away. Having to start all over in a new school, and then having to start all over again 2 years later in another new school. And what about the other students? The children who are heavily invested in activities that may not be available at the school that you assign them to. And sports. Rising middle and high schoolers who want to be part of their home team, and the established players who may risk losing the opportunity of playing a sport that they love, not to mention possible missed scholarship opportunities because they have to rezone to another school community for 2 years, and then they would have to move again. Above all, what about the students who will transition to these multiple schools? I believe our group calculated that some of our students will change schools up to 4 times within this temporary rezoning period. Having seen all the times that my children were in a temporary place due to our military moves was not something that I would want any other child to go through. The negative far outweighs the positive. My children are used to being temporary. Most of the others you wish to rezone are not. Being temporary is not a good thing. I have seen this heavy burden on their shoulders, and it is heartbreaking. Our children have experienced more often than not that when moving, they tend to lose a valuable source of support, some friends. Our experience that children being children, even with the best of intentions, will protect themselves, and when finding out a friend is moving, they tend to break away, and hearts are broken, both from the ones moving and the ones left behind. It is not their fault. I mean, who wants to have people close to them no longer being an intricate part of their life? Nobody, especially school-age children. When we chose to move to Sumner County, we specifically chose Station Camp Schools for the one thing that our children have not had in years, and that is school stability. All of you should know more than anyone that children thrive on stability. That stability is now being ripped out from underneath them. Temporary, transient, whatever you want to call it, if this current rezone is approved, our children will just be passing through for 2 years into another community. How many of you really thought how that would affect our children? Please, I pray that you will find a way to keep our kids at Station Camp until the new schools are built. There has to be a better way to abide with the laws and not disrupt our kids. It is much more beneficial to the most important people here, our children of Sumner County, to keep our community together until we can move one time, just once, for an easier, more stable transition over to the new schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harding. Next, Matthew Harding. You won't have to turn the mic on, it's already on there. Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Matt Harding. I live at 208 Buckley Point in Gallatin, Tennessee. I'm a commander in the United States Navy, and I've served for the last 25 years. I'm here tonight to talk to you about alternatives. As a commander in the Navy, I'm used to receiving a series of alternatives from my subordinates with pros and cons and risks associated with each of those. It allows me to look at each of those alternatives and weigh what is the best possible choice with guidance from my leaders, and then I can go and make the best possible choice available. However, this situation, the Stage 1 rezoning specifically, has been handled very differently. Now, I know this is not a military organization, but civilian organizations hold a similar parallel where you would have a group of subordinates provide solutions to a leader. The leader would take those solutions and make the best possible decision available to them. Specifically here, Dr. Phillips, as the director, is hired by you as the school board. So Dr. Phillips, as a subordinate, would provide to you, the leader, a group of alternatives for you to analyze and make the best possible decision that you could make based on your expertise. Now, I'm no subject matter expert on education. If you need someone to drive a submarine for you or operate a nuclear reactor, you can call me. That's what I do. I'm no expert on classroom size, rezoning, capacity, and those sorts of things. But just in 2 hours at my home this weekend, I typed up a list of 6 different alternatives, each of which I think are better for our children than the one that has been currently proposed that you're going to vote on in February. Are these alternatives that I've listed here, and I certainly wouldn't mind providing that to you if you would so choose. I printed out enough copies. Would you like me to pass those out? If you, okay. And again, these are just me sitting around my house for a couple of hours just putting some things together. Are these alternatives easy to implement? No. Would they require some extra work and digging and adjustment to make them happen? Yes, but I think in each case they help our kids out more than what is currently proposed to them. And that's the key, that I don't have the expertise, but the expertise resides here. That's with Dr. Phillips and you, the board. You're the experts. I think it was a few weeks ago Dr. Phillips came out and talked to us while we were sitting here in a group, and I made the point that in this building we have the ability to make, we have really, really smart, caring people that when we pull our resources and our smartness together, we can make some really good decisions that I think would be much better for our kids in the long run. And that's the key to this whole thing. We collectively do not want it to be us versus you or us versus Dr. Phillips. We want to partner with you and be part of the solution. And I think that we have the ability to do that. There's a lot of really, really smart people in this room today. Our children deserve better. This group owes it to them to be presented with a series of alternatives that you can analyze the pros and cons and risks of each and use your expertise to make a good, educated decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harding. Next is Dana Smith. Ms. Smith, microphone's already on.
My name is Dana Smith, and I live at 233 Blackthorn Lane in Gallatin. Good evening, Dr. Phillips and school board members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My oldest daughter, Allie, is in 4th grade at Station Camp Elementary, and my youngest daughter, Corinne, is in kindergarten. I currently have the honor of serving as PTO Vice President and room mom for both of my child's teachers. On the evening of October 23rd, I was anxiously awaiting to hear the outcome of the vote at the Hendersonville-Boma meeting regarding Forest Park when I was shocked with the news of the proposed plan of Stage 1 and Stage 2 rezoning for the Station Camp area. My phone immediately began to blow up with calls, texts, and Facebook alerts. When presented with a problem, my first reaction is to act and solve it. I began a Facebook group that night to start organizing concerned parents and to begin gathering information. I have been overwhelmed with the outpouring of support from my neighbors and friends. We had our first meeting that weekend, and our group, Stop Stage 1, was officially formed with the goal of finding better solutions for temporary rezoning. I shouldn't have been surprised with the overwhelming support and action taken by those affected by the proposed area of Stage 1. We are a group of parents and students who are actively involved in our schools and community. We are PTO members, room moms, substitute teachers, athletes, club members, musicians, honor roll students, donors, and volunteers. We love our schools and we take great pride in them. Personally, as a member of the elementary PTO board, we have already seen the negative effects of this proposal. Our donations have already gone down with the February vote looming over our heads. Parents are hesitant to contribute when the future of their school zoning is in limbo. Parents and students are struggling to understand how this makes sense. We are a little over a mile away from Station Camp and literally in the middle of the current zone. On November 17th, we had the honor of having our school board representative, Mr. Jim Hawkins, join us at our neighborhood clubhouse to talk with us and answer questions. He provided much needed insight, but left us with many of us with lots of questions, and these are all rhetorical. Why isn't Burris, which was built to alleviate overcrowding at Station Camp, not being used to its full capacity? What is the projected growth in the Station Camp area for next school year? I have heard lots of long-term growth numbers, but no numbers for the immediate future. For example, Forest Park has been approved, but homes won't be ready for occupancy for over 2 years. Are some families being counted twice in projected numbers while they live in a Station Camp zoned apartment awaiting the completion of their new Station Camp zoned home? Did you know that the Beach Elementary School is 5 miles from my home compared to Station Camp Elementary, which is 1.3 miles from my home? Over the course of a school year, that is over 1,100 extra miles going back and forth to school. What emotional, social, and academic support will you provide Stage 1 students during this proposed transition? Are plans in place to add programs such as before and after care, junior ROTC, and STEM accreditation at Beach? Will additional tryout opportunities be added for rezoned students who missed the initial ones? You have heard from many of us tonight regarding your rezoning guidelines, psychological effects, traffic issues, curriculum and programming concerns, and academic support. But I want to draw your attention to the people affected by this, the children, parents, and families. We are not just numbers or a circle on a map. We are homeowners who invest in our community. We are parents who support our schools through time, talents, and treasures. We are children trying to learn in a stable and effective environment. We have names and reasons for wanting to stay. We are Brooklyn Catrone, a kindergartner, a Citizen of the Month, and Character Champ. We are Blakeland Hall, a second grader, a Character Champ, and Citizen of the Month. We are Allie Smith, a fourth grader, Student Leadership Council member, peer tutor for Special Needs Friends, Character Champ, and Citizen of the Month. We are Seth Bailey, a sixth grader, basketball team member, A-team member, and Character Key winner. We are CJ Farrell, eighth grader, football player, and Beta Club member. We are Caden Gregory, freshman, cheerleader, Beta Club member, DECA member, and Tribe member. How would you feel if your child had to attend 4 different schools in 4 years? Under your plan, my fourth grader will attend Station Camp for 4th, Beach for 5th, TW Hunter for 6th, and the new school for 7th. How would you feel if your special needs child, who had developed a rapport and consistency with their current teachers and environment, is forced to change schools not once, but twice, and therefore backslides in their emotional and academic progress? How would you feel if you stopped homeschooling your child so he could attend Station Camp High School to join junior ROTC only to be rezoned to a school that doesn't offer it? In conclusion, I ask you to please consider everything we have said tonight and vote against this plan that includes temporary rezoning of our students. The Station Camp area is a great one, but unfortunately is also a perfect storm of 2 city limits and county limits all coming together, creating a jumble of misinformation and lack of communication throughout our local government. We needed better planning 10 years ago, and as Mr. Hawkins shared with us, he has been advocating for that for some time. According to Mr. Hawkins, this is uncharted territory and nothing we have ever done before. Poor planning on the part of adults should not negatively affect our children. They are our future, and they deserve so much better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Next is Jessica McCarnes. Microphone's already on.
Hello, my name is Jessica McCarnes. I live at 657 Mills Lane. I'm going to make this short and sweet. They covered quite a bit of several of my concerns. This will be more about the personal impact that it will make on my family. I have a daughter that started kindergarten at Station Camp Elementary this year. My husband and I purchased our home on Mills Lane in March of this year and sold our previous home on Gibbs Lane, also here in Gallatin, for the purpose of having our children attend at the Station Camp Schools District. We also have a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old. I have lived in Sumner County between Hendersonville and Gallatin for most of my life, attending elementary school in Hendersonville and middle and high school in Gallatin, and my husband started a business in Gallatin about 18 years ago. Aside from the fact that moving our daughter 3 times during her elementary school years could possibly be a disruption for her mentally, emotionally, and therefore academically between different schools and different sets of friends, the rezoning will disrupt my entire family structure, as others I'm sure. And by structure, I mean we're talking about bedtimes and waking up times, and while this may seem silly and not an important factor to many of you, this will be quite the undertaking to potentially have to adjust more than once with 3 small children in the next 3 years. Doing it once will be hard enough. We are a Christian family, and while my daughter is quite versatile and I know will be okay no matter what the outcome, I hope that you all will consider a better alternative to the temporary rezoning, since the responsibility lies on the poor planning of the part of our city and county officials and not on those of our children who will be impacted the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCarnes. If you would, yes, turn the microphone off. Thank you. I think that concludes the recognition of hearing and delegations. That's all I have. Do you have any more, Mr. Johnson? That all of them? Okay, I want to make sure we got everybody. Next item on the agenda
Mr. Chairman,
is,
sorry. I talked with Mr. Johnson earlier, and he said that given that we're in a flexible delegation situation, that we might ask whether there are others who might wish to come forward and speak, who might not have been able to sign in ahead of time. A few people entered after the meeting began.
is there anyone else? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is matters involving council. We don't have any council tonight, so I don't see one. So, yeah, that's good news. Then the next item is reports from director.
Holiday season is upon us, so just hope everybody has a great start to holiday season. We did start with EOC testing for high school, so online, and that has started off pretty smoothly. Just a couple of bumps, but nothing big. Typically, if you remember last year in the fall, it was pretty smooth. It was just in the spring when we added 3 through 8 that we had the problem. But this year, hopefully, this segment of fall EOC will go well. It's off to a good start, and then hopefully we keep our fingers crossed. But with paper and pencil for 3-8 in the spring, hopefully high school EOC in the spring will go smoothly too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Next item on the agenda is new business discussion interaction regarding stage 1 zoning. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Mr. Daniels. Second? Ms. Andrews? Discussion. Ms. Andrews.
Yes. First, I just want to say thank you to all the parents that are here tonight. It wasn't that long ago that I was on that side. It was actually 5 years ago. I was sitting exactly where you were sitting, with the same, some of the same concerns and so forth, as my family was looking to be rezoned from Little Beach to Burris. And it wasn't anything that we saw coming. We moved in our house thinking that we would be in the beach zone. As a matter of fact, my oldest daughter's kindergarten year, I walked up to the principal and said, well, you've got us for the next 10 years. That didn't turn out to be the case. So I do understand where you're at. And I commend you as parents because you're doing everything you can for your kids. And that's what we do as parents. We fight for our kids and we do everything we can. I've heard lots of great discussion tonight. I hear the concerns. And I think a couple of things that I can address. And I can tell you with this off the bat, my biggest concern with this rezoning, and I've talked to Dr. Phillips about it, is traffic on that. And so I just want you to let y'all know that, yes, that is a discussion that is happening. That is not something that is not recognizable. I mean, we definitely recognize that traffic is an issue. It makes it difficult. That's not something that is easy to figure out. So we're having ongoing conversations with that. So just to let you know that is very much the top of our priority list, and that's something that we're looking at. I've heard a lot. I follow your group on Facebook, and so I've seen some discussions, and I commend you for some of the alternative plans. I know one plan specifically that sounds like would be an easy solution, and it would keep your kids from moving, would be portables. And where in some circumstances, portables, I think, could, for lack of a better term, be the easy. Station Camp, specifically the elementary, is unique in and of itself. That's not something that obviously is a surprise to you, but the size of the school is currently, even when it's at capacity, which it's at or very near right now, it makes some challenges. I know I spoke to a teacher earlier this year, and she told me that there was one classroom left. And so I think of your music teacher, and I think of your art teacher, and all those other related art teachers and your cafeteria workers, that it's easy for us to say, hey, let's put some portables out there and we'll keep the kids. But that means those increased kids, you're looking at, I think right now, per grade level for average, from talking to Mr. Holt, is somewhere around the 150 mark. You're looking at putting 200. To ask Miss Andrews to put 200 kids in a performance when there's empty classrooms at Beach, that's difficult. Additionally, we've worked really hard in this county for the last 5 years, really hard, to get rid of portables. I've fought, sat at many meetings, put my neck out a lot to help us fund our schools better so that we can get rid of portables. It would not be fair, in my opinion, to go to the county commission, who has walked hand in hand with us on that, and they have undergone a lot of scrutiny, to ask them to put our tax dollars into more portables again when there are empty classrooms down the road. I will not sugarcoat it. I will not act like this is a fantastic plan, that this is easy, because it's not. I know it's hard. My daughter, when we got rezoned to Burris, when we were rezoned, it was my oldest 5th grade year. I had a 3rd grader, a 2nd grader, and a kindergartner. My oldest was one of 5 girls that was rezoned from Little Beach. She knew 5 girls going into the entire 5th grade. It wasn't easy. Because of instances that happened, my kids started in the middle school. We bumped in the middle of the year. We helped teachers pack up their classrooms, and then we moved them to the new school. So I do understand those concerns, but I can also tell you, kids are resilient. They're absolutely resilient. From what I can see from Burris, they've done great. Who it was the hardest on, and still sometimes now, are the parents. It was very difficult on the parents, and we still have some things that we work through, because we had 3 schools that all came together. So all that to say, again, I do understand it's not easy, but I think one thing, just from Dr. Phillips' original presentation and just some discussion that he left for us, was that Station Camp High School and Beach High School virtually have the same numbers. I think overwhelmingly you can look and say, when it comes to high school specifically, they get on a path, and they're not all the same at all of our schools. Station Camp definitely offers some programs that Beach High School doesn't, and that can be very disruptive, like many people have said, to college opportunities and so forth. So, with that said, Dr. Phillips, you left it open that we could grandfather the high school students if they provide their own transportation to that. Is there currently room, because with the schools being similar in size, could we allow for any student that under current zoning would be zoned for Station Camp High School in the 1920 school year? So we would be looking at current juniors to 8th graders. Would we have room to allow that?
Yes, I think I mentioned this on the 23rd, and I think I mentioned it when I was speaking with the parents, and so I think that's been out there a little bit. But I have first of all, I want to thank the parents. I mean, I'm glad that you are not pleased about leaving Station Camp. If we did this type of thing, which is very difficult to do, and no one came, I would be concerned about our schools, right? We want people to be upset. I know that sounds kind of strange, but we want you to be upset because that means you love your school. There's really no issue as far as a number concern with allowing current 8th graders through juniors to go to Station Camp if they can provide transportation, if the parents can get them there. The schools are relatively the same size, Beach and Station Camp. Station Camp is about 1475 last week. Beach is hovering right at 1400, depending on what day you pull it. So you're dealing with that population, 8th graders currently in stage 1, around 75 students. So, that's going to be fine. You're going to be fine allowing those students to go either place.
Okay. With that said, then I would like to make a motion to amend the stage 1 zoning to include the language that would reflect, I'm not sure exactly how that needs to be worded, but to reflect that students in grades, current juniors through 8th graders or seniors through freshmen of the 1920 school year, as long as they are able to provide their own transportation, to be allowed to stay at Station Camp High School.
Sure.
Motion to amend and seconded. Motion by Ms. Andrews, second by Mr. Daniels. Any discussion on the amended?
We have that restated, Mr. Last.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's not a bad amendment, unless you are a child whose parents both work and they have to be in downtown Nashville at 7 o'clock in the morning. They don't get home till 6:30 in the evening, and you don't drive. And if you did drive, you don't have a vehicle to drive. And we've done this before where we've grandfathered in, and I recall that over the years. However, there may not be but one child who falls in the category of, I'd love to stay, but I don't have a way. And I just feel like that's unfair to that child, and I can't support it because of that. If we could figure out a way to provide transportation, which is almost impossible to do, it's just that amendment, though I appreciate that amendment very much, I just have to look out for the interest of those who are depending on us to look out for their best interest. Probably every parent here would make a way for their child to be provided transportation. I get that. However, not every parent is here, and not every parent has that ability. Therefore, I just cannot support an amendment to this motion that is unfair to some. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Ms. Brown?
I feel like that these children are all together and friends and whatnot, and obviously the people who spoke and attended tonight are really caring parents, and I'm sure that they would be willing to give their friend's kid a ride. I think they can work it out. Kids are resourceful at that age. They'll work it out. If they really want to get somewhere, they'll get there. They manage to get anywhere they want to be when they want to be there. So I think they'll work it out. We've done this every time, and I think it's a fair way to handle that. Luckily, we're not overloaded where we can't handle it, so we got fortunate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Any further discussion? Mr. Hawkins?
Just for the interest of clarity, we started this particular agenda item, and there was a quick motion and a second, and then there was an amendment to the motion. Can we go back on the record and say what we're voting on with the primary motion, because we clarified earlier that the ultimate vote on stage one zoning will not be taken until February 2019.
Yep.
So with regard to the initial vote that said motion to approve and second, could we have that spelled out on what that means in the context of this Robert's Rules of Order meeting tonight?
Yep, I think you can handle it one of two ways. One, you can either vote on the amendment, or we can ask the first and the second if they would just change their original to place in the language to amend. You really should vote on the amendment. I think that's what you should vote on.
Again, thank you for that clarification. Going back to the original motion, when it said motion to approve, does that mean plain English? Go ahead.
My recommendation would be to ask the first and the second if they would amend their first motion for purposes of discussion. And then on the amendment, you either vote it up and then continue the discussion afterwards, or you can vote it and say, move we approve current motion, and then put final vote on the February agenda or something like that.
Thank you. So this, in no portion of tonight are we making a, quote, final vote. That's right. The motion to approve is to put a plan forward that will be further considered and further discussed. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman? That's correct. Thank you.
Just a point of order. The first motion takes it off the agenda, puts it on the table for consideration.
That's correct.
Now that it's on the table for consideration, it can be amended.
Correct.
But you can't approve it until you get rid of your amended motion.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. I think that's correct. I think we need to vote on the amendment and then go back to the original motion. Am I in agreement with everybody on that? Okay.
Again, for the purpose of clarity for the record, could we simply have the amended motion restated? And I think it was pretty well stated, but could we just restate it so we're all of a like mind as to what we're voting on? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Motion to amend stage one to allow current 9th grade students through 11th grade students at Station Camp High School and rising 8th graders currently at Station Camp Middle School to attend Station Camp High School.
Rising 8th graders is 7th grade.
Oh. Current. See, that's why we do that.
It's simpler just to say current 8th graders through juniors that attend Station Camp Middle or Station Camp High would be allowed to stay if they provide their own transportation. We'll restate it for everybody.
All right, let's try this again. Motion to amend stage one to allow current 9th grade students through 11th grade students at Station Camp High School and current 8th graders at Station Camp Middle School to attend Station Camp High School, provided they provide their own transportation.
Is that what you wanted, Ms. Andrews?
Now, do we want to
Is that
add
your motion?
1920, 2021 school year? Do you want to add
Yeah, you need to add, you need to add 19, 20.
for the 1920 and 2021 school years?
I think it would be think it would be less confusing if we say students in students who will be freshmen through seniors in the 1920 school year to stay versus, or you can say, yeah, rising freshmen to seniors in the 1920 school year.
What you're doing is you're putting the years in there. You're putting the years in there because if you don't put the years in there, 2 years from now, you're gonna be standing here with some 10th graders at Station Camp that are supposed to go to the new school, but everybody else is getting moved. That's why you gotta put the years in there. Because otherwise, you're gonna wind up giving them an advantage you're not gonna give kiddos that move. So you gotta put that they're gonna be allowed to stay, during the Stage 1 rezone. Does that make sense? That's where it gets a little tricky with what you do in 21, because if you concede to allow them to stay, which I'm perfectly fine with, then you're gonna turn around in 2021, and you're gonna have kiddos at Station Camp High School that fall under this exemption that a 10th grader at Beach High School may not have the same opportunity. Does that make sense? I mean, that's what you're staring down in 2 years. So you got to think about how you're going to kind of handle that 2 years out.
But I'm not sure. I mean, I think we need to do this for this year, but I don't feel like that we can make any preconceived things as far as 2 years out just because of we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So we can't, and we'll have an election in 2020, and so everyone who's currently on the board may not still be on the board in 2021. So we cannot make decisions for that far in advance.
Well, I think that's why you have to specify in your motion, in your amended motion, you have to specify that it's for the 1920, 2021 years, because then you're still leaving yourself an opportunity in 21 in the spring. You're going to have students that have moved from Hunter to Beach High, right? And then you're going to have possibly some students that are still at Station Camp grandfathered under this plan. You're going to have the same thing either way. You're going to have people in both spots that would go to the new school. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So if you're currently a 9th grader and you're allowed to stay for 2 years, then you would be a junior, a rising senior when the new school opened. If you're a 7th grader and you go to Hunter, or you're going to be 8th grade, 9th grade, and you're going to be at Beach as a rising 10th grader. So those two folks are going to be, two kiddos are going to be in the same boat. There's going to be a new high school out there. You're going to be sitting here in January, February of 21, zoning Stage 2 for the new school. And it could impact both of those, it will impact both of those students. So the only way to not have that happen would be only to exempt or grandfather current 10th graders. Right? Current 10th, 11th grade at Station Camp, because they're going to have graduated before the new school's built. Current 10th graders will be gone before the new school opens. So you won't get hung with two different groups being treated possibly differently based on the motion.
Okay, I don't know how exactly we need to word it, but my intention behind the motion is at this point to say, okay, if you're current 8th grader to 11th grader, then you will be able to stay at Station Camp through the duration of your high school career. because I don't think that that will be fair if we allow them to stay now, and then so it's, you've got an 8th grader that's going to be a 9th and 10th grader under it, to then go, okay, we're jerking you out and sending you to the new school. I feel like with the grandfathering, similar to what we did when we rezoned like the Autumn Creek, we allowed them to then, once they're grandfathered in, they finish out the duration of high school. And then, so then once, if you've got then a student that's at Hunter that then will go to Beach, then I think at that point, the board would need to decide whether or not those students would get to stay at Beach or if they, or go to the new school. But these students, is that?
Yeah, it's just, only thing that I'm trying to tell you is that you're gonna have a run of students there that are going to be treated differently at that point, because you're gonna have some students that are at Station Camp High that are in the Stage 2 zoning, that you're ruling right now that they're not gonna be forced to go to the new school. But students that are sitting out there at Beach are gonna be forced out, and that's not gonna be fair. I mean, I know, you see what I'm saying? That's not gonna be necessarily, I don't think, a good thing. That's gonna be a very, very odd spot to be in 2021. I think what we probably might know work. Too many lights on. I think probably what we should do is to probably to think through that a little bit.
Yeah,
I agree with you. That has been a typical pattern that we've taken, is to do that, and I'm okay with it. I just think I think in 2021 we're going to be sitting here going, why did that happen? Why did we do that? Because now, I can't live up to it. I need to move people. I just think we need to think through that.
In kind of following up on what Dr. Phillips is saying, we've got an amendment, and we're trying to clarify what that amendment is to make sure that we do it right. I think a number of board members here agree that we want to allow rising 8th graders through juniors to be able to stay at Station Camp High School. We've just got to figure out the right way to phrase it to make sure that we've got the process set up in a way that benefits everybody moving forward as we reach 21-22 school year. The actual motion prior to the amendment is simply to pass the zoning plan as is for this meeting. It doesn't mean it's approved. It doesn't mean it's final. It just moves it to the next meeting. Our next meeting is the next Tuesday. And
I'm going to tell you what I'd do.
Is withdraw the amendment for now?
I'd withdraw the amendment and somebody make a motion to defer this to January, so it's back on the agenda in January, so people can come speak again. Because it needs to be back on the agenda again, because I think David or somebody mentioned that y'all were going to have some options or solutions, something like that. I think I remember that. So I would withdraw the amendment, give us time to have a discussion about this, administratively, so we understand what it means. Somebody make a motion to defer, which can't be discussed.
I move to defer.
I'll second.
There we go. It can't be discussed, so vote, and that means that it gets deferred to January's meeting, because we need it on January's agenda so we can have public comment again. Right? Y'all see what I'm doing here?
She needs to withdraw her amendment before we vote to defer.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't have microphone control
Sarah, will you
very much, so
Will you withdraw your amendment?
I think I'm gonna, never mind.
I can, but we have a meeting in December. So is that not enough time for us to do that versus January?
We could.
I'm saying just for the amendment purpose on that. I mean, I feel like parents, that this is a big component, that parents, specifically with high school students, there's a lot juggling right now.
You can just defer it to the next meeting. And if you don't want to, if we don't have a solution or we're not ready, then we can defer it to January because the parents are going to speak again in January. And we're not voting until February, so there's a February meeting too. So you can defer it here until December, have it on the agenda. But what you probably need to do right now is you need to withdraw your
Okay.
amendment. And then we have did you withdraw your amendment?
Yes, I will withdraw
Okay.
the amendment.
And then we had a first and a second on the deferral to December, right? Okay? So we just need to vote on the motion to defer to December.
I thought the motion to defer was January. Are we gonna change it back to December?
Change it back to December
Okay.
now.
So there's a first and a second on the motion to defer. It's no discussion on the motions to defer, so we'll take a vote.
Everybody understand what we're doing? All right,
For clarification, is that the December 11 meeting? That's the only meeting we have.
it's the only
Right.
meeting we have in December. All right, on the deferral, to defer to December 11th meeting, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion
Before
carried.
I vote,
You already did.
no, I didn't.
Everybody else did. We had the mic
I
open for
know,
discussion.
I had it on, you just didn't see it.
Okay.
We have a full meeting on the 11th. We do. I said, but we do have a full one already before this. But we can just stay longer. I mean, we may have to come in here in shifts. We could do that, I guess. Okay. Okay.
Hey, turn your light off, please. All right, we're done.
Can I take the liberty here to make sure parent, because I know most of the folks here, everybody kind of knew what happened there. So we just deferred it out to December. So it'll be on the agenda in December. And then whether any action's taken about high school, middle school, or no action's taken, then it can be deferred again to January. And that's so we're able to keep it on the agenda and you can make public comments. Is that just according to our rules? Does everybody understand what we're doing there? Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what we're doing.
Okay.
Thank y'all.
Next item on the agenda, item number 2, discussion and interaction regarding proposed 2019-2020 district calendar. Is there a motion? So moved by Ms. Andrews, second by Mr. Daniels. Discussion.
Question.
Mr. Gregory.
Did someone want to make an amendment to change on A, to change the May 23rd, which is the last day of school, to so that we would not go that day, but go, we should just be teachers only, on March the 3rd. Is that correct?
Ms. Langford.
Yes, sir, Mr. Gregory. We
Okay.
after the study session, we went back and we came up with a modified calendar A.
Oh, I didn't get that one, don't get it.
It's on the, I think it's on the board docs.
Was
for
it
the
online?
Yes, sir.
Well, wait a minute, I have it here.
It's after we had A, B, C, and then it's at the end. There's a modified A.
Oh, I don't see a modified.
Revised 47.
If you'll look at that A one, Mr. Gregory, I can tell you the changes. Basically, the only real changes from the calendar A we had last time
Oh, okay.
is we
That was
slid.
added on, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We slid the professional learning day from October 14th to November 1st, and then we went in and we made March 3rd a stockpile day instead of just a day off. That's a presidential primary day, and so when we made that a stockpile day, the kids won't be there, so that'll alleviate our security concerns. But then it gives us the room to have teachers come back on January 6th on that Monday, and kids come back on the 7th, And then our last day of school will be May 22nd, which is a Friday. That'll be that abbreviated day.
Thank you, Mr. Langford. Is that all, Mr. Gregory? Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Mr. Daniels?
I do want to clarify, since I did second the motion, your motion was for choice revision A. To approve that calendar, we've got 4 options. I just want to make sure that revised choice A post-board study session 11, 13, 18, I assume that's the one that we're,
Mine was so that we could move it to the floor for discussion. This is discussion interaction regarding, so move to put it on the floor for us to discuss it, and so then there'll need to be a motion made on which calendar we're going to pick.
Yep.
Okay, well,
Make your motion for the one that you want.
you made the motion.
revised choice A post-board study
Okay.
session.
I will keep my second on that one.
I think everybody should be focused on revised A.
Yes.
Because revised A takes into account what Mr. Gregory mentioned, and also one other change that you guys talked about at the study session. So that's why those 2 changes are reflected in revised calendar A.
Yes.
So the motion is first and second on,
Revised calendar A.
yep, adopting revised calendar A.
All right, I didn't see who came first, so you're first, so Ms. Andrews.
I want to say thank you to Mr. Langford and for Mr. Young. We had a great discussion. I felt like to get to the revised A and so forth. And I feel like while no calendar is ever perfect, I feel like that this calendar will hopefully work well for our working parents as well as for our teachers. My one question I do have is, with this calendar, is there anything with it when because once this calendar is approved, then we'll have to look at approving Union's calendar. Is there anything that you foresee that's going to disrupt that calendar?
I don't think so. I think the one thing we're looking at is in the past, we've scheduled Union's days to include the summit, so they don't get to participate in the summit. What we're going to try to do is figure out a way to not have that happen this year, so where their teachers can participate in the summit.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, just a quick question. I know we've always voted on them separately in the past. When is do you anticipate us voting on the Union calendar?
Should be, we usually do it in the next month or so, right?
Yeah, we can do it. We'll just say if it fits on the board agenda in December, we can do that, or otherwise we can do it in January.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Any other discussion on revised choice A?
I have
Mr. Wilkerson.
one question. The only difference that I see is a parent conference day on C, and that's not on A. Is that the only difference in the 2?
There are a couple. The main ones are it's basically we slid a professional development day from October 14th to November 1st, and then other than that, it's just we moved a day. We made that March 3rd date a stockpile day, so that compresses us a little bit to get away from that Friday in January or that Saturday in May.
Okay.
And then other than that, we did take. Basically, probably the biggest other difference would be is what I think you've identified is that on that C calendar, we have a parent-teacher conference day in February, and essentially we've just moved that to March 3rd. It's not parent-teacher conference, but it was a stockpile day. And really the reasoning behind that is that most parents don't come to high school conferences. And then elementary and middle school are 2/3, 3/4 of the way through their year. And most of our principals felt like they were able to accomplish with our online grading system and email and telephone that we have so many more forms of communication, and really our teachers are trying to reach out much earlier if kids are struggling. So
Okay.
it doesn't really serve a huge purpose for us, and we just didn't see any sense in taking a day off there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Langford. Mr. Wilkerson, that all? Turn your light out there. With any further discussion on revised choice A? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is discussion interaction regarding a revision to policy IDFA, middle school athletics upon first reading. Is there a motion? Moved by Ms. Andrews. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Daniels. Any discussion? Mr. Wise.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to offer an amendment to this motion. And that amendment, the only change would be where on line H, each school may field a varsity and junior varsity team in all sanctioned sports. Students below the 7th grade will not be eligible for participation in football. Replacing the word athletics with the word football, which tells me that they may participate in all other sports except football. My amendment would be to leave the word athletics in there and remove the word football, so that below 7th grade do not participate in middle school athletics.
Motion, amended motion been made by Mr. Wise. Is there a second?
I will. Mr.
Second
Brewer.
Second by Mr. Gregory.
Thank you.
Did you second the motion?
No.
Okay, well, hold
I
on.
thought the motion had been seconded.
We're working on an amended motion that was made by Mr. Wise, asking for a second. Is there a
Mr.
second?
Wise, can you clarify, because I don't have the policy in front of me, can you clarify, so you're saying that that 6th graders could participate in any sanctioned sport except football?
No. That is what the revision, the main motion is to allow students to participate in athletics except football. In other words, it is a negative statement. Students below the 7th grade will not be eligible for participation in football, is the way the proposal is stated currently. Marking through the word athletics, I'm saying leave the word athletics in there and removing the word football. Thus to read, students below the 7th grade will not be eligible for participation in athletics. Is that clear? In other words, it is my thought that if you're in the 6th grade, you need to wait until you're in the 7th grade to participate in middle school athletics.
Any athletics.
Any athletics.
Which is
That's
basically
correct.
what we have now.
That's absolutely. I see no need for that revision for that part of that statement H.
So if you take that out, I just want to make sure we're straight here. If you take that out, you pretty much have the same policy we have now.
That's correct.
So,
That's correct.
So I don't know that we need an amendment, to be honest with you. I don't know we need an amendment. I think you would just vote no on the policy change. Because the current policy restricts any participation in athletics below 7th grade.
Well, and I don't disagree with that. However, there are other revisions. For example, under the word football, under the heading of football, middle school football game will be scheduled on the March through the 3rd and put second Tuesday. So all these other things I don't have a problem with. I have a problem with 6th graders participating in athletics at the middle school level. I don't think they're ready.
I got you. Thank you. Appreciate you clarifying that. So you're fine with everything with the exception of 6th grade athletic, that particular statement?
That's correct.
Okay. So just so everybody understands that Mr. Wise's amendment would basically keep the structure of athletics in middle school the way it currently is. Right? All right, so he would need a second on that for a discussion or for a vote. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Hold on, Miss
I
Brown.
can't.
Miss Brown, hang on, Miss Brown. We got others ahead of you. we need a second before we can move forward with this. We have an amendment on the floor that's basically going to leave the policy just like it is, with the exception of the other things that's changed in the policy. That don't even make sense, does it? But what he said anyway. So we need a second so we can move forward. Is there a second on that amendment? If there's not going to be a second on it, it's going to die for a fail of a second. Any second?
Can I ask a clarification?
Clarification from Mr. Duncan.
My clarification is this. Tennessee Middle School the MTMSAA allows sixth graders to participate in cheering and cheer competitions. Are they defined under the general term of athletics?
Yes, yes. By this board, yes.
We did that in 2008, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Once again, is there a second? Seeing none, Mr. Wise, your motion for amendment fails for lack of a second. Back to the original motions. Any discussion on the original motion? Mr. Daniels.
Yeah, just to clarify, I think the sports that we're talking about, sanctioned by the Middle School Association Board, is basketball, cheerleading, and cross country, and track. Well, in track. I think those are. Am I right? Are those the only ones we're talking about?
Mr. Athletic Director.
TMSAA sanctions several sports. In Sumner County, we have football, basketball. We have some schools that run track and some that run cross country. All right, cheerleading doesn't really fit, but it does. TWSAA recognizes it as a sporting activity, but doesn't sanction it as a sport in the same manner that the others are.
Yep. Thank you. All right. And so I think we had some discussion at our last study session about this, and you know, I don't have a problem with allowing, you know, sixth graders to play. I mean, they're coming into middle school. I remember when my kids were going, well, I've got more that are going to be there eventually. When my first batch went through middle school, you know, I remember basketball and you know, cross country and track, and looking at those and wondering why a sixth grader couldn't participate, you know, with the other students in the school. And I know it's because, you know, previously, you know, even in Sumner County, we used to have junior high, like when I was attending school, like right here in shop in this class. You know, we only had 7th and 8th grade. I know there's a question of maturity. I agree that sixth graders don't need to be out there with 7th and 8th graders on the football field. I think there's danger there. When I look at basketball, when I look at cheerleading, sixth graders are already doing that, either through club teams, either through AAU teams. And if they're good enough to be able to make one of those teams, if they're already doing, if they've got the skills, then I don't think there's any harm in allowing them to pursue that at the middle school level. So I do support these changes, and look forward to hopefully seeing the sixth graders have an opportunity to participate moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Mr. Gregory.
Thank you. I talked with both of our middle school principals today, and we were pretty much in agreement. I wouldn't say 100%, but we had some good, I thought, some good ideas. We discussed it very thoroughly. And I personally do not feel like, after discussing with them, along with Mr. Wise, I do not believe that our sixth graders, and I'll give reasons why, need to be put into the classification of middle school athletics. And the reasons I'm saying this, and I've been involved in athletics before I was even sixth grade, every year. Pretty much a spectator now, but I got beat Saturday too. There are 2 or 3 reasons that I'm thinking this. If all students matured at the same rate, it may not be a bad idea. But I have seen this, witnessed it on more than one occasion, that some students as sophomores were not even capable of being able to practice very well and become very good ball players before they graduated from high school. I'm saying I do not give up one bit on a student participation as a 7th grader. Now, in saying that, or 8th grader, in saying that, in a lot of your sports, you have a certain number that you can take. You cannot take 35, 40 basketball players. I mean, that's not possible. Therefore, someone would be left out that may be a late maturer. And if they are, then I would say that would be a punishment to that particular student. Part number 2, I'm very close to a professional basketball player who just finished his 11th year in the pros. That's pretty good. He is the only one that I can think of in our community that would have been able to play as a 6th grader. We've had another one that went to Power 5 major university, played what I would call semi-pro basketball for several years. He would not have been ready to participate as a 6th grader. Played in state tournaments, the whole bit. I'm just not thinking it would be a good thing. I think you'd be hurting some other student, and I just don't feel like you would see I don't think you could almost, your count would be almost 0 of students being able to play as 6th graders. Although I do think it's good that they have the rec leagues and park leagues and all those things, and I think all of our communities probably do that, and I think that's beneficial, provided one thing, to have good coaches. That's important. And so that's the reasons that I am opposed to it. Not that it's just one of those things I got up this morning and thought about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. And Mr. Wise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Dr. Phillips. He is returning, isn't he? He hadn't quit on us, has he?
Yeah, I didn't see him sneak out. So yeah, he should be back.
Okay, good. I do have a question for him when he returns. And I don't want to belabor the point here. However, children depend on we adults to try to make the right decisions for them. And I think this is one that I think allowing sixth graders to participate on teams with eighth graders. And I have coached for many years several different sports. My last venture into coaching was middle school boys basketball. And I'm going to tell you, there's a huge difference physically, mentally, and emotionally between an eighth grader and a seventh grader. Not sixth grader, but seventh grader. So, because of that, my concern for a sixth grader who may be eligible for athletics on the middle school team, I'm concerned that it's the right thing to do. And I think doing this, approving this motion, falls under the category of, or not approving it, quite frankly, it falls under the category of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and I don't think it's broke. Now, my question for Dr. Phillips is, if we add sixth graders in athletics at the middle school level, are we going to have in our budget enough money for another assistant coach at the middle school level? Because it's probably going to require additional coaches.
The way, Mike may be able to answer this better than I can. That was one of the concerns, I think, when this first came up months ago, when we met with, Mike met with middle school athletic directors and principals. The way it's worded, strategically, we really don't know how many kiddos would make a 7th or 8th grade team as a 6th grader. I would suspect that it would be very few. And in the sports where there may be athletes in the 6th grade that could competitively make the team, I don't know that that number is enough that it changes. Mike, you may want to speak to that, but I'll give you an example. If you exclude football and you say you can't create any additional teams, then you would have to have a 6th grader outperform a 7th or 8th grader to get a spot on an existing team. In a male sport, that's going to be hard. It's just going to be hard to do. Now, track, cross country, you could, but they field larger teams anyway. So I don't know that it's going to cause necessarily a huge budget impact, a coaching impact, because I think it will ultimately, if you do approve it, I think it will be very, very few students that are able to fit through that that window of being able to make an existing team and bump a current 7th or 8th grader out. That's just my opinion from an athletic perspective. Mike, you might want to address it too.
As far as the additional coaches, most of our basketball teams, not all, but most of them have a JV team. If they have a JV coach, the school activity fund is paying for those coaches right now anyway. The track is usually one of the 3% other, and they're doing boys and girls usually. So on behalf of the coaches, if you'd like to add some more coaching supplements, we'd be grateful. But realistically, the teams that don't have JV squads, that would be up to their coach. If they have somebody that would help them do that, then they would be like some of the other schools. It's going to be more beneficial for the development of players in some of the smaller schools that don't have JV because they don't have enough. The larger schools, you know, they got 56 graders going out, you know, for maybe one spot, maybe two. It's also going to be more prevalent. Out of 10 of them that make it through the county, probably 8 of them are going to be girls, because girls tend to be able to compete at an earlier age, and that's been proven. When I coach freshmen, I coach 10 freshman basketball teams, 2 girls and 8 boys teams, and I had 4 7. We were junior high then. I had 4 eighth graders that were good enough to play at the ninth grade level in 10 out of 10 teams. So you're not talking about a lot of kids. But as far as additional coaches, though any additional coaches are just like they are now, they'll be coming out of activity funds from the schools, which they have. If you see a team that's got a basketball assistant, either that school's funded them or that person's donating their time.
One thing that, to follow up on that, one thing, and I think I mentioned this when we discussed the policy at the study session, that we were more concerned about were the addition of teams. So that's why the existing teams have to be the only teams you have. So we didn't want to runaway train with all of a sudden now we've got 3 JV teams because they're fielding 2 full of 6th graders because they're a larger school. Does that make sense? We just didn't want that. So that's why we would only really consider it in the context of you've got to keep the existing teams because that would limit, and it would allow, you know, like Mike's talking about, it would allow a very narrow window of athletes in the 6th grade that would be able to compete at that level and bump a current 7th and 8th grader out. But we wouldn't have, you know, 15 additional teams next year at the middle school level.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. I've got Ms. Brown first. I'll come back to you.
I noticed 2 things that bothered me. One was that these 6th graders would bump a 7th or an 8th grader. My other thing is my priority is education. I think a kid moving into middle school and I've taught middle school, has a tremendous adjustment. And if you've got a kid who's 6'4", obviously the basketball coach is going to want him to be training all he could. Well, he can tell him to go run his 6th grade year, and then he can try out his 7th grade year. But I really think we need to look at getting them settled in the middle school, getting them concentrating on academics. Then they're going to make a better sports person, and they can be training, you know, running or whatever for whatever sport they choose. But I'm against 6th graders being involved in any athletics.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Hawkins, did I come to you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to sort of put some quick context on this, we're talking about our teams that are functioning. When we say sanctioned sports, we're talking about the sports that are sponsored through the TMSAA, Tennessee Middle School Athletic Association. And there are 12 sports across the state that our middle schools can partake in if we have enough students, enough coaches, enough community interest. Baseball, basketball, bowling, cross country. I'm reading the TMSAA website. I'm saying statewide, schools can offer them. It's up to the local school district and schools to determine whether they will offer them. We're not committing ourselves, but I'm just saying baseball, basketball, bowling, cross country, football, golf, soccer, girls softball, tennis, track and field, wrestling, and girls volleyball. Each of those is certainly not, I'm not aware of any middle schools that have teams in all 12 of those. But those do exist in one or another middle schools across the state. We are making a choice tonight to limit 6th graders from football. But we're allowing, as Ms. Andrews talked about, talented, particularly female athletes who want to participate in volleyball or in basketball to go ahead and try out in 6th grade. That was part of our dialogue at the study session, as I recall. And we also have defined cheerleading as part of athletics within our Sumner County schools. So I think what we're saying tonight with the proposal is that we're going to prohibit football for any 6th grader. We're going to allow other 6th graders to participate in athletics based on a tryout / parental control basis. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
That's the way I understand
as
it.
proposed.
That's the way I understand it as proposed, yes. Mr. Daniels.
You know, I've heard a little bit of talk about 6th graders and maturity and things like that, and you know, there's a couple things that I would like to point out. Our middle schools right now, many of our middle schools have baseball teams. Many of our middle schools have soccer teams. Many of our middle schools have softball teams. They're all clubs. I believe they all have volleyball teams. They're all club teams. 6th graders can play on those teams. 6th graders currently do play on those teams. All we're saying in this policy is that if a sixth grader wants to try out for basketball, they have the ability to try out. It doesn't mean they're on the team, it means they can try out. If they want to try out for cheerleading, they can try out. It doesn't mean they're going to make the team, it means they can try out. If they want to be on the cross country team or they want to be on the track team, I don't know if they actually have tryouts at most of the schools. I know when my kids were at Schaefer, it was more of, if you want to come out and run, you can come out and join us. And I don't see any harm in letting kids get out there and run around if they can have transportation. I had 2 girls that played middle school volleyball their entire career. It was great as sixth graders that they were able to get into the JV team because it gave them an opportunity to make some relationships and help them integrate with that school a little bit better. And so I don't see the harm in allowing that to continue. It's already happening in most of the other sports. I think in basketball, as Dr. Phillips said, and I think we'd probably all agree, and even Mr. Gregory mentioned Corey Brewer a little bit earlier when he talked about someone who's played basketball. I know that's who you're talking about. You know, I know exactly who you're talking about. It would have been fair for him to have been able to play as a sixth grader. He was good enough to play. You know, and we've got other sixth graders that are really good athletes. They'd have to try out like everyone else. They're not guaranteed a spot. And if they don't make the team, then they can try out as a seventh grader and they can try out as an eighth grader. I remember, you know, 3-4 years ago when my daughter played her 1 year of basketball on the Schaefer basketball team and was trying to figure out what offense and defense was, but it was fun to watch anyway. I believe that was the year that the boys team for White House won the district and possibly at the middle school level almost won a state championship along with the Schaefer team. And most of those boys on that team played AAU and been playing together for 4, 5, 6 years and probably could have started or played as sixth graders on that middle school team. And so I don't think there's a harm in allowing that to happen. I don't think there's it's going to affect negatively students integrating into the school or affecting academics because it's already happening anyway. And so I just, you know, I think to allow those students the ability to try out, and if they make the team, great. And if they don't, then they can work harder, continue doing their club team or rec league. And if they want to go out and run on a cross-country team and get in shape, I could certainly use it. If they want to go and run on a track team, they can do that as well. So, you know, I think this policy allows for some flexibility there for those students. So that's why I support it. Thank you.
Ms. Andrews.
Yes, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Daniels. I think you summed up well my intention behind this policy. Having kids in middle school, more to come up through middle school, there's lots of discussions, and it can be very confusing, quite frankly, with people saying, like with baseball, you know, okay, my kid is in sixth grade, why can your kid try out for baseball, but they can't play basketball because it's sanctioned, because that baseball's club. And so I feel like changing our policy to this puts it a little bit more on even playing field, no pun intended, but for those students in sixth grade to not be excluded from those sports. I've spoken to a couple of different cheer coaches that are ecstatic about the possibility of allowing sixth graders on their squads. They said that it's very difficult. Every year they feel like they're rebuilding a team. Some of that's been said too with basketball. It's like they're having to rebuild because they don't have anybody kind of coming in and even learning the program. Obviously, cross country and track, you know, I don't know that anybody necessarily sees a problem with those kids getting out and running. I'll have to respectfully disagree with Ms. Brown about it being waiting for them to go into their 7th grade year before they play a sport. I actually see more benefit with them starting in 6th grade because 7th grade is a really hard year. From what I have seen, from my own student and as well as talking to other parents, 7th grade is probably your hardest year in middle school for various reasons. So I feel like if you actually give them a start in 6th grade, they kind of can get their footing, where teachers a lot of times have a little bit more grace. They have, you know, they're working with them more. They're, you know, helping them to learn the school community environment and so forth. And it is a great way for those students to get plugged in, to feel like they're a part of something. You know, I feel like our middle school students, I mean, it's hard. It was hard when I was in middle school. But it's really hard now. And so if that gives our students a place to belong, even if it's just being on the team and they get to go practice. I mean, a lot of, my boys play all-star baseball and so forth. And so we know, though, going into it, you're on the team, but you've got to earn your spot. And most of the parents who would allow their sixth grader to try out will understand that just because their kid makes the team doesn't necessarily mean they earn playing time. That's, you put in the work ethic and so forth. And they might get a few minutes, but it's really in preparation for the years to come. And so that's where this has come. And as I mentioned at our study session, obviously, you were all here a couple of months ago when I first brought it, and I was, hey, let's do all sports. Let's let them in. And then we had this year's football season. And we had back-to-back Beach High School games, one in which a Station Camp player, and then in another, I believe it was a Beach player. We had students leave the field in ambulances. And I was convicted, and I thought, you know what? To give those students an extra year and restrict them from football their sixth grade year, we have great junior programs that are happening where they can develop and can learn the sport. And so I'm okay with restricting that. But I feel like to restrict it across the board, like I said, because specifically we do have all those other sports that are allowing sixth graders to play, it makes it difficult. So obviously, I asked for the change to the policy. I'm obviously going to support it. And like I said, I appreciate Mr. Daniels. I feel like you summed up my intention behind that well.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Duncan.
I'd just like to weigh in on my previous inquiry about cheerleading. I have been fortunate enough to attend a number of regionals and state championships, and to see our middle school teams compete against other middle schools who allow sixth graders. It's very, very, very difficult for them to be competitive. That seems kind of contrary to everybody's discussion about they're not physically able to participate. But in this particular sport or athletic endeavor, it's a better fit. So that's why I'm wanting to allow sixth graders in for that one specific group. I see the value of it, of what it does for the school and the community. And again, I hadn't thought about it from the academic point of view, because seventh grade, from what I've experienced with my children, is the most difficult. And having them a foundation and a team from sixth grade, I think it actually will help them in their academic career. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Ms. Brown.
Well, my point is that, and I'm not here to change your minds about what you think. My priority is education. And you're talking very few students that are going to be able to make it. And the first thing it does is set a few apart from many. And I don't think that's good. I think a year of being sixth graders and getting adjusted to middle school and getting on in with the academics and handling the class changes and all of that, I just think that you don't need, what are you going to have, one or two per school that are the biggies? Because they made we've got to automatically get a cheerleader, and you'll probably get one in one of the other sports or something. I mean, you're going to have, and they're going to be the uppers to the others. Yeah, that's the way it is in school. And I just think a year without that would be a nice break, but that's just my personal opinion, and I have taught middle school. Matter of fact, seventh grade. So I know it's hard. But the sixth graders are like babies compared to the other kids. There's a world of difference between a sixth and a seventh grader. In fact, I don't know that a sixth grader doesn't belong back with elementary.
Mr. Chair,
Thank
I'd
you, Ms.
like
Brown.
to call the question.
Yeah, let's call it.
I'm ready to call it too. I think we need to do a roll call vote on this one, so we'll start with Ms. Andrews. Mr. Johnson, you ready to take the votes?
Mr. Chairman, what's the actual motion?
As it is on the agenda, that you're voting, a yes vote is you're you're voting for the change in the policy as shown. A no vote, you're voting no on the policy revision.
Mr. Johnson?
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Wise?
Nay.
Ms. Brown?
No.
Mr. Gregory?
No.
Mr. Wilkerson?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman Brewer?
I'm a no.
That motion fails by a 5-4 vote.
All right. Motion fails. Next item on the agenda is discussion interaction regarding recession of policy FE project planning. Is there a motion?
Wait,
Motion approved, Mr. Wise.
can I ask a quick question on the last one? I'm sorry.
Your policies is it takes 6 votes to pass anything in the board.
It's not a majority vote?
It's not a majority of present, it takes a majority of the board.
Where was I? We had a motion. Need a second? Do you have a second? Second by Ms. Brown. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item, discussion interaction regarding the recession of policy FDDA. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion approved, Mr. Wise. Second by?
Second.
Second by Ms. Brown. All in favor say, any discussion? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Any
Mr.
discussion,
Chairman.
Mr. Hawkins?
As worded, it says we're asking for the recession of this policy, or are we talking about the rescission, the cancellation of the policy?
Yes. Rescission.
Okay, I think just for the record, let's spell that.
Correctly, David.
I did
It's
go
a
to school
small,
in
it's a
Lawrence
small
County.
typo, but it means the difference between pausing it and canceling it.
I think he just put it in there just to make sure we was paying attention. That's what he was doing. So.
Okay, so rescission. Got it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Mr. Hawkins, if you turn your light off.
Thank you.
All,
I'm going to rescind my light instead of recessing it.
all right. Chair acknowledges that you have rescinded your light. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, discussion interaction regarding amended textbook adoption committee. Motion approved, Mr. Wise. Second by Mr. Wilkerson. Any discussion? Ms. Andrews?
This is updated. Is this adding elementary?
Scott.
Is that what that is? Is the textbook committee, is it adding elementary? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We had some that had not fully submitted their list, so we're adding those in.
I have a question.
Mr. Hawkins?
We have parent participation recommended on this list for elementary and middle. We don't have any parents listed for the high school, but we have a larger number of teachers at the high school. Does that offset parental input?
Yeah, I think it's,
It's sometimes harder to get parents of high school kids. We can look and see if we can find some high school parents that'll be involved in the textbook adoption. It's just participation rates change at grade band levels, but we can absolutely we've got if you look at it across the board, because we do a uniform adoption, so we have elementary and middle school parents represented, but we can look to see if we can find some parents that are involved in high schools that are interested to add.
The teachers who are listed in each of the bands, elementary, middle, and high school, these are impressive educators. I'm not taking away anything. I'm just saying, if we have the opportunity for a parent to be involved in the high school level, I think we should reach out and encourage that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, unfinished business, discussion and interaction regarding amendments to the general purpose budget. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Mr. Daniels, second by Mr. Wise. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, discussion and/or action regarding amendments to the federal budget. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion approved by Mr. Gregory,
Second.
second by Mr. Wilkerson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is discussion of study session items. Mr. Johnson, what have we got coming up?
We do not have a study session in December. Our next study session will be, hang on, let me grab the board calendar. January 8th. And we'll have, our continuing journey through the policy manual and rezoning on that study session.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next item on the agenda is comments from board members.
Real quick.
I'm sorry. I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
I know we don't have a study session item, but I do have one question that may relate to study session. Just about 5 minutes ago, we voted to not pass IDFA on first reading, which means all of the changes that were listed, in addition to changing it to allow sixth graders to play, none of those other changes will be made. Is that correct?
That's correct.
At this time, so middle school games, the first game will still be scheduled on the third Tuesday. Sumner County schools may not play schools that are not TMSAA members that adhere to the rules and regulations of TMSAA. How important are those things for, I mean, I know that outside of the football athletics piece, I felt like the other stuff was kind of stuff that we needed to have in the policy. So I guess my question is, does this need to be put on a study session agenda in the future, so at least we review and discuss and vote on these other items?
I made a note to talk to Mike and see. We'll talk about it, and if we need it on the if we need it to change within the policy, we'll just put it on January study session and talk about everything except what you've already voted, which is the athletic end of it. So, yeah, I made, thank you.
Okay.
I made a note about it, but I was gonna ask Mike, I think the second is big for us to finish football, before fall break.
Yes, we actually asked board permission to start on the second, when we did that.
So
and the others just cleaned it up some later.
Probably needed Andy to be back on there. I just gonna make sure with Mike it's necessary, and we'll have it on January's study session.
All right, Mr. Duncan.
Mr. Chairman, while we're talking about study session items, I'd like to also revisit IDFB along with IDFA in the next study session. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on study session items? That being said, we'll now move to board comments. Comment from board members. Ms. Andrews.
Yes. As you mentioned earlier, let's remember Alice in our prayers. She texted me before the meeting night saying that she was still not feeling well. She's going back to the doctor tomorrow. So she's had a bout with this, I think, a little over a week at least or so now. So just remember her. I also want to say congratulations to Beach High School Soccer. They won state championship. The football came just shy of that, but exciting. Go Bucks. Also want to remind board members that on Friday of this week that we're having our joint lunch with the county commission. We plan on meeting at Union at 11 if you could make it. If you could let me know tonight if you're planning on making it, just so I could have a rough head count and I can let Mr. Taylor know. That would be great. And I just want to say thank you to all of our schools that hosted veterans programs. I know I had a couple of people ask me, hey, why are our schools open on Veterans Day with it being a holiday? And I like us being open on Veterans Day, and I commend our schools because they do such a great job of recognizing the service and sacrifice that our military folks do, where if we weren't in school, I don't know that many of our students would, have that recognition and have that experience and to see the people in our community who have served. So I just want to say thank you to all of our schools that did that because they did it very well.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also would like to congratulate the girls soccer team at Beach. They did a wonderful thing, and they won the state title. Also, they have been invited to light the tree in Gillisville, so they'll be there on Friday night at 6 o'clock. If you'd like to come out and support the soccer team, please come out to Gillisville and come to the tree lighting at 6. Also, Station Camp Middle School, the cheer squad, since we've got that conversation started, they've won a state title and a bid to nationals. T.W. Hunter, I'm a little partial to that. They won their first regional in Brentwood, got first place. They went to North Alabama Regional, got second place. They went to state and won the state title in their division with 0 deductions. That particular team's got a grade point average of about 3.7. Academically, they're up there at the top. So I want to congratulate all those teams and wish them luck in the national bids. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Mr. Hawkins.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. First, want to quickly mention the Merrill Hyde Middle School State Championship team. We were talking about middle school sports tonight, and our own 7th and 8th grade runners at boys runners at the Merrill Hyde Magnet School won the state championship, and that was a tremendous accomplishment and was recognized in the Tennessean, and I want to make sure we recognize it here tonight. I want to thank each of the 7 parents who spoke tonight. I think we had a series of very thoughtful and well-prepared comments. I think you all added a lot to the decision and consideration that all of the board members are facing as we go forward in addressing this. It was a learning experience for me to listen and spend 2 hours and 55 minutes with these and several dozen other parents Sunday a week ago, and then I've also heard separately from another 3 dozen, so over between 50 and 60 parents I've been corresponding with, and I'm still receiving information and appreciating the inputs and insights. I appreciate the handouts that were handed out. I'll take home, read those, and research those as well. This is not an easy process, but I do want to affirm to the parents here tonight, as I did Sunday a week ago, that each and all of these school board members with whom I have been serving for the past 2 years are remarkably focused on and dedicated to providing safe and effective schools. And let there be no question that that is a common element of unity among everyone in this room, our staff, our parents, our board members, our SROs who are present in the back of the room. Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate your service as well. And as we go forward, I think that we are all trying to get to a decision that works and makes sense in transition. I also noted that several of the parents mentioned we are supportive of the need for the new campus of schools. And over again, I heard that not only tonight, but Sunday a week ago. And that was something that I was very receptive of. And that also raises the question of where are we in 2 years as students who may go to another high school then say, do they stay at that high school or do they help launch the new school to be named? Also, we have the question of how do we deal with overlay if we do a zoning and new members move into these very same neighborhoods of Carrollton and Neals Lane and elsewhere north of Browns Lane, north of Long Hollow Pike. And their neighbors are grandfathered in, but they're not. So we do have that sensitivity. And these parents are sensitive to and aware of those issues as well. Ultimately, we're trying to do something that makes sense short-term and long-term for the students, and I feel that I can pledge that all of the school board members will keep that in mind as we go forward. We don't know exactly what it'll look like. We've heard just tonight about the possibility of grandfathering for 8th grade through juniors, this year's 8th grade through juniors, based on transportation. But I think I want to applaud Mr. Wise for bringing up a very sensitive point that not all families and parents have equal resources or equal logistical arrangements to permit that. So I appreciate your articulation of that. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Daniels? Mr. Wise? Ms. Brown?
Dr. Phillips and I attended Merrill Hyde Magnet's celebration of their great academic awards because they've had an unusual number. And of course, it is a magnet for our kids that want to go there, and some of them do choose not to go there. It's not like all our smart kids are in Merrill Hyde, you know, from going to the individual schools. There are many brilliant kids in our regular schools. But it was very nice. The teachers were certainly appreciative, as was the principal and the assistant. It was a nice visit.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Gregory?
No comments.
Mr. Wilkerson?
I would like to acknowledge the high school at Westmoreland. In the past couple of weeks, one of the custodians was involved in an automobile accident, totaled her car out. So she was walking back and forth to school. Ricky Duffer, the principal there, seen her, asked her about it, and she told him that she had wrecked her car and she didn't have coverage to replace it. He sent out to the teachers and some of the churches. They gathered enough money to buy her a new car, and I think that's very commendable of them and speaks highly of them.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkerson. I would just like to say thank you to all the parents that's come out tonight. It's cold. You came out and had some very, very good discussion here, and I really do appreciate that. Appreciate you following our decorum and not throwing things at us and that kind of thing. So really appreciate that. Appreciate y'all, and we're going to do everything we can possibly do to do whatever we can do to help the kids and get them the best education safely and soundly as we possibly can. It is a hard decision. Sometimes we have to make hard decisions, but we're going to weigh everything out and try to do the best we can. And so with that being said, we are adjourned.